Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Thursday, August 23rd, 2012. I'm Tony Paniagua. The Marist College building in downtown Tucson, which is owned by the Tucson Catholic Diocese, has been getting controversial attention recently due to the city of Tucson's financial commitment to help restore it. Tonight, we have a report about the building's rich legacy in this community. Luis Carrion has that story.
This is the Marist College building, a historic three-story adobe structure in the heart of downtown Tucson. Built in 1915, the Marist College has been an important part of the Catholic tradition in Tucson, providing a church-based education for countless children from surrounding communities. But the building is in need of restoration, and its future is uncertain.
The first time I was missioned to, because we were missioned to St. Augustine, was in 1958.
Sister Mary Evelyn Soto appears in this photo with her students in 1958. She now takes care of the books at Immaculate Heart Academy, and she says she no longer is in the classroom. But she remembers fondly her time working with students at the Marist building adjacent to San Agustin Cathedral.
And I had first grade and a very large class, children, diversity of children. I had Hispanics, Anglos. It was I recall it as a beautiful class, but I would say all the children attending at that time were children from the neighborhood.
The Marist College building was converted into office space for the diocese before it was eventually vacated in 2002. And Sister Soto says she feared the worst when portions of the structure gave way during a storm in 2005.
There was a Marist brother here not too long ago, and I told him about it, so we went over so he could see it, And I thought at that time they were going to demolish it.
The deterioration of the building is dramatic, and more than a few people thought the storm damage signified the beginning of the end for the Marist College building.
We ran roof drains. You can see there's a flexible piping coming from the roof to drain any excess water off the roof.
John Shaheen is property manager for the Catholic Diocese of Tucson. He says the church has done what it can to mitigate the damage to the building.
Proactively, we reinforced the other corners of the building just to make sure the same thing didn't happen there. But what did happen was the roof drains got blocked up, caused water to get behind the wall, and the adobe sucked it up and then just washed out, dissolved. There's old pits underground in some of those sinkholes.
That's right. I remember seeing that in another building.
Right, yeah.
Shaheen walked us through the building with co-worker Steph Koneman, pointing out the various architectural features that make the Marist building unique. He says the high ceilings and the wooden floors were covered up during the conversion to office space. But a restoration process would reveal the original design visible in the photo of Sister Soto's classroom.
But I'm thinking if you walk this way before they put the partitions up, I'm wondering if she was over here, because I'm thinking this is probably where the chalkboard would have gone.
Well, there's a window here too. It could have been here. Then this wall wasn't here?
No, this wall wasn't here. This wall was here, but the door opening wasn't.
According to Shaheen, the building is salvageable. He says since the initial storm damage of 2005, engineers have stabilized the structure and are now monitoring it closely.
On the walls here, you'll notice these markings. These were put there by the structural engineers to monitor any movement in the building. And they're dated 2/27/08. You'll see some back as far as 2005. And as you've noticed, that there hasn't been any movement or cracks in the building.
The Marist College is clearly in need of work, and it remains to be seen how the story unfolds for this historic structure located in the heart of downtown Tucson.
What the developers like, though, is when they've come and looked at the building, is not the upper floors, but it's the basement, because they see so much potential here.
Shaheen says this basement, made of poured concrete, is an attractive feature to developers who envision a restaurant or some sort of community gathering place.
when they come down here, they see a brightly lit space. There's been talk about putting a bakery down here. There's been talk about making this into a restaurant or a hotel or an information center. Everybody wanted to basically do the same thing with the basement and make this into some type of a restaurant or eatery. And watch.
Do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see happen with the building?
Well, I would like to see it restored. You know, it probably, I don't know, offices or something like that in conjunction with the cathedral, with the parish.
Yeah. You would like for the church to retain control, ownership of it?
Oh, definitely.
The state of Arizona is known for many beautiful yet often rugged or treacherous regions that are rich in history, archaeology, and mystery. And tonight we'll tell you about one of these special places. It is called the Devil's Highway or El Camino del Diablo, and it includes a famous waterhole along the way that provides a valuable resource in this parched landscape. Joining us is Gail Harrison Hartman. She is one of the authors of Last Water on the Devil's Highway, A Cultural and Natural History of Tinajas Altas. Gail, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So if you could tell us a little bit about this Devil's Highway, where is it located for people who may not be familiar?
The Camino del Diablo runs from northern Sonora through southwestern Arizona and basically to the Colorado River. It's the way folks for centuries have gotten from what is now Mexico to California. And of course it works both ways. And Tinajas Altas, or high tanks as the local folks call them, are a series of natural pools in a high valley or going up and down a cliff, and they are filled by rainfall. There's very little rain out there, maybe 3 inches a year on a good year, but this is the most reliable water source in the region.
And obviously, because it's the most reliable water source, it's very important for people and animals in that area?
Yes, people have used it for thousands of years, Native Americans on up through Spaniards, Mexicans, 49ers, etc. And yes, bighorn sheep particularly use the water there, and that's, of course, part of the reason that Native Americans went there. It was a good place to hunt. And also to process beans, mesquite beans, so there's hundreds of what were called mortar holes, grinding depressions, that people have used for a very long time.
So what inspired you and the other authors to actually dedicate a book to Tinajas Altas?
Well, as one of the co-authors, Bill Broyles, likes to say, if this were not on the Barry M. Goldwater Air Force range, military range, this would probably be a national monument. It's a place with amazing history, and it's quite beautiful during the 6 months of the year when it's not a furnace. It's really wonderful in the fall, winter, and spring. The Air Force, which manages the area, was willing to fund our work out there, which was really great, and we also work with the Marine Corps. So it's been the military who in some ways had damaged the area, but now they're being very good protectors.
Great, and you wanted to talk a little bit about the history of this area, and for example, there are some misconceptions about whether Father Kino used this watering area.
Well, historians always want to try to figure out exactly where Father Kino went. And he made a number of trips from Sonora up into the Colorado River area. And there have been thoughts that he probably used Tinajas Altas, but we think not. We think his route was to the east. It went to what's called Cabeza Prieta tanks and another place called Baker tanks, and then up to the Gila River. So the first Spaniard probably who visited Tinajas Altas was Jacob Settlemeyer in about 1750.
And so this has been traveled for a long time. And just to put it in perspective, it is west of Ajo and east of Yuma for,
well, it's
right?
4 miles north of the international border, the border with Mexico. Yes, certainly southeast of Yuma and quite a ways west of Ajo on what's called the Camino del Diablo, which is a dirt sand track. It's perfectly passable much of the year. You do need a permit if you want to visit this area from the military, so don't think you can just go barreling out there, but it's very easy to get one.
Okay, and then we also wanted to talk a little bit about a historic cemetery that at one point at least existed out there.
One of the interesting features is that people who visited there in the 1800s, early 1900s, talked about the cemetery that was there, maybe 60, 70 graves, many with crosses. When I first visited there in 1970 or 71, there was one cross left. We didn't understand what it was a remnant of. We later learned that in the 40s and 50s, there was a American federal agency that was at that time called the Bureau of Animal Industry, and it was there to combat hoof and mouth disease. People had a couple little cabins, and they apparently bulldozed some of this cemetery, probably unwittingly, not really knowing what they were doing. And other people have just gone out in recent decades and dug around looking for gold. It's always for gold. There isn't any gold. So unfortunately, the cemetery is largely gone.
And if you could talk to the audience and say, why should they care about this area? Why should they read the book, for example? What would you say to those people?
Well, I'd read one sentence from Bill Broyles, the co-author, the principal author, who writes beautifully when he says, "It sparks our courage and our imagination. It speaks of an old West, not far past, where human ambition and endurance were pitted against the full intensity of the Sonoran Desert. Tinajas Altas is a national treasure deserving our fullest allegiance."
Okay, well, Gail Hartman, co-author of Last Water on the Devil's Highway, A Cultural and Natural History of Tinajas Altas. Thanks for being here and good luck.
Thank you.
The sensational Jackie Evancho returns to great performances to enchant us yet again with the sheer beauty of her voice.
I wanted to do a show devoted to the songs of the movies.
Feel the love when Jackie Evancho sings music of the movies on Great Performances.
Tonight at 9:30 on PBS 6.
Hundreds of millions of people around the world were able to enjoy the Olympics on television or other forms of communication, but a small minority was able to witness some of the action in person, and it's an experience they'll always cherish. Next, Caitlin Harrington speaks to members of two local dance groups that actually got a chance to perform in London.
Joining me in studio today is Bettina Montañez. She is here from the Ballet Folklorico La Paloma. And Bruno Loya, he is here from Viva Arizona Dance Company. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
I have you both here to talk about your recent experience. You were actually just in London performing for the Summer 2012 Olympics. Bettina, talk to us a little about, this is your second experience performing in the Olympics, and tell us about this one in particular.
Yes, this one was totally different because, it's of course in Europe, and we had a really great dance group join us, Viva Arizona, join us for this performance. And the last time we did have a mariachi, and we strolled to the Olympic Park. And this time around, we had different venues to perform at, and they were all very exciting.
Bruno, you're a dancer with Viva Arizona, and you have been for about 15 years. But tell us about your experience. This was not only your first time at the Olympics, but your first time traveling international. Is that right?
Yes, that is. So it was just an awesome experience to go and experience a new culture and be able to share my love of dance with, different people. And it was exciting to be able to, go and perform, give a taste of Tucson, give a taste of the history of Arizona, and performing for other dancers as well as, locals from London.
And Bruno, can you talk to us a little bit about Viva Arizona, where you first became interested and how your dance has kind of evolved over the last 15 years?
Yeah, so I originally became interested in the company. My tia used to perform with the studio. And because of that, I just, became infatuated. I used to love watching the show, seeing the costumes, the lighting, and I said, I need to do that someday. And so I started dancing with our Folklorico group when I was 4, and I kept working towards it, and I became a member of Viva Arizona. And so it's just been a great honor and a great blessing, and it really has changed my life.
Bettina, can you talk to us a little bit about Ballet Folklorico La Paloma, the type of dance that you do, and the rehearsal process for the Olympics?
Well, the type of dancing that we do is a traditional Mexican folk dance. We do regions from Veracruz to Jalisco, Mexican hat dance. We do Nuevo León, just the variety of different regions in traditional folklore. And, the costumes are beautiful, and they just, represent each region in its own. And, so it's been, the rehearsals, were very, very intense at the end. We had been rehearsing for the past 3 years since we did find out about the Olympics. So every performance that we did, we got better and better, and so those are the regions that we worked on. Mostly is the ones that we were going to get ready for London.
And Bettina, we talked prior to this interview about one of the main components of actually going to London, which was fundraising for you guys. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the help that you received from the community as far as getting you to London?
Well, we did a lot of performances, throughout Tucson and surrounding areas. We fundraised. We did food booths. We did car washes, bake sales. You name it. We did everything. We also had, luckily, had some sponsors, kick in. Unique Photography was a big help for us. In-kind support, and we also had, some monetary donations. One of the biggest ones that we did have was from Total Merchant Services, and they donated quite a bit of money for us to get to London. And of course, we did have a lot of other sponsors, and their in-kind support was greatly appreciated also.
Bruno, can you talk to us a little bit about, this is a collaborative performance between the two dance companies, and you actually have another one coming up in the near future. Can you talk to us about that?
All right, so coming up in September, our Folklorico group is actually going to be hosting workshops at UNLV in Las Vegas, which will allow different Folklorico groups. We have groups coming from Canada, from Texas, as well as from various other places. They're going to be taking workshops, and then they'll actually have a chance to perform at the Planet Hollywood. So it's going to be the first time that our group is going to be hosting the workshops, but this mariachi conference has been going on for many years, so it's just going to be a great opportunity for us to bond with our own group as well as with other groups from now around the world. Like I said, we have that group coming from Canada, so that's definitely something that we are looking forward to within the next month.
Bettina, in addition to the workshops that you'll be co-hosting with Viva Arizona in Vegas, you did say that you do have another upcoming event. Is that right?
Yes, we do have a performance coming up in December at the Performing Arts Center in Green Valley. They've, really liked our performances there in Green Valley, so they, request us back every couple of months. So we do have planned that in December.
And Bruno, we have about 30 seconds left, but how would you encourage kids or young adults to get into dance, and what would be some words of wisdom for the people who may want to do that?
I would definitely say just to try it. Go out and, try doing something different, and more likely than not, you will find that you have a passion for it. I know that my 3 little siblings, they saw that I like to dance, and they got into it, and they love it now. And so they're moving up in their classes, they're learning dances, they come home now, and they're really enjoying it. So I'd say just, encouraging it in schools and encouraging it in the community and really supporting your children in it.
Bettina and Bruno, I thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have probably heard a lot about Julia Childs recently, since the famous cook would have turned 100 years old this month. And even though she's most famous for her televised recipes, tonight we'll tell you about another aspect of her life. Mark McLemore has an interview with a Tucson author who co-wrote a new book.
Patricia Barey is the co-author of a new book called Julia's Cats, Julia Child's Life in the Company of Cats, which explores, as Tony said, a sort of unseen side of Julia Child's personality. Tell us how you got involved in writing this book.
I was in public television early on in my career. I worked at WTTW in Chicago and Phoenix, and I was very much aware of Julia Child and thought to myself, this is just an intriguing personality. This is somebody I would really be interested in all my life. And sure enough, she changed my life. She taught me how to cook, and she taught me to be interested in food. And as I say, I'm just kind of curious about her and about what was it about her that made her so happy. She just seemed to be so joyous, and I kept that idea with me for a long, long time, and then decided that my co-author and I would really investigate this. So we went to the Schlesinger Library at Harvard, where all of her papers are, and found thousands of letters in her own hand, and it was just such a thrill to see her little loopy handwriting, and we discovered that there were lots and lots and lots of stories about her more personal life, her more intimate daily life. They were both wonderful letter writers. They wrote just thousands of them. And her husband is almost a journal because he had a twin brother and he wrote almost daily. So all of the details of their daily life, and that included cats and food and Paris and everything that she was falling in love with in Paris. And the stories about her cat, how she found her cat was one of the best stories. She had mice in the kitchen. So a maid decided to solve all that problem, and so she brought Minette, her very first cat, to Julia, and then she fell in love with cats from then on.
Well, I love the idea of trying to decipher Julia Child's recipe for happiness. So go in and tell us a little more about how cats fit into that recipe.
When she was in Paris, as I say, all these things came together. When she went to Paris, she was 38 years old, didn't know a croissant from Rice Krispies, but discovered she was wild about French food, and she was a very disciplined person and a very, very intelligent woman. She really wanted to learn French cooking and the discipline of French cooking. So she studied it. She took it very seriously, and the study of the French food and the French and the whole culture transformed her life. It just, and then cats were part of that because she fell in love with cats at the very same time. So all these things, and she adored her husband. There was a love affair, a lifelong love affair with her husband. So all of these things happened at once in Paris, and cats were part of that mix. And every time she had a cat, or even saw a cat, it seemed, according to her letters from then on, she identified that magical time in Paris with cats. So they just meant everything to her.
Well, tell us about the many photographs that illustrate your book, because a lot of them do show Julia, in one occasion, a cat drinking out of her water glass, for instance.
We got so lucky. At the Schlesinger, her husband's photographs are on record there, too. They've compiled all of them. And he was a fabulous photographer, a very artistic man. And they have literally thousands of his photographs. And lucky for us, a lot of them were of Julia and cats. He adored cats too, so this was just a favorite subject for him. So the other material we found there, visual material, was she had a personal collection of rubber cat stamps. She just loved to pound all of her letters and all over the place with these different cat stamps. And so there are some of the cat stamps in the book as well. And we got a lot of pictures too from her friends and family. These letters that we talk about at the Schlesinger only went up to about the 70s and 80s. And then they stopped because they were back in the States, so they weren't writing that much. But her friends and family agreed to interviews with us because they thought Julia would think a book called Julia's Cats would be more fun than anything. So they were very supportive.
Well, through your research, what would you say is a lesson that you learned from Julia Child?
The biggest lesson Julia taught me answered that question that I had when I first experienced her way back when, and that is her recipe for the good life. Julia's recipe for the good life was really very simple. Find something you love and do it every day. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be cooking, it could be playing with cats, it could be doing anything, but just do it every day. And that's what makes her happy, and that's what makes anybody who likes Julia Child, makes them happy too.
Thank you for sharing some of these stories with us, Patricia. Your new book with co-author Therese Burson is called Julia's Cats, Julia Child's Life in the Company of Cats.
Now we go to Damian Klinko, who joins us each Thursday with educational information about some of the many architectural, historic, or cultural treasures in our region. Klinko is the president of the Tucson Historic Preservation Foundation, and this week he has a story about one of the most visible and famous landmarks in our city.
Sentinel Peak, also known as A Mountain, is Tucson's largest natural resource park. It's within walking distance from Tucson's oldest and newest downtown neighborhoods. In December of 2010, the mayor and council adopted a new management plan to highlight its history, revitalize its appearance, and improve its function. Tucson gets its name from the Tohono O'odham word Tucson, which means spring at the foot of Black Mountain. The basalt base of Sentinel Peak, where the Santa Cruz River rose to the surface, provided water and life to Native Americans, Spanish missionaries, and the multicultural settlers who called this area home. Archaeologists have found remains of the first irrigation, first pottery, and first villages in the Southwest on the rich farmland between the base of Sentinel Peak and the Santa Cruz River. Our community did not always value its cultural epicenter. In the mid-20th century, the birthplace of Tucson was converted into a landfill. More than $50 million was invested in this area through the Rio Nuevo funds for infrastructure, which included remediating the landfill, building Avenida de Convento, and the archaeological work necessary to catalog the cultural resources and plan for the recreation of the Convento, Mission Gardens, and Tucson Origin Heritage Park. Cultural resources discovered at the base of the mountain include Hohokam pictograph ruins and the remains of pit houses. The future of the area was not always assured. In the late 1920s, a mountain almost vanished. James R. Dodson and Christine Dodson claimed A Mountain via the Homestead Act. They wanted to quarry all of A Mountain. Tucson residents fought them in court. The Dodsons argued that A Mountain rock was more valuable than the rock of the surrounding mountains. When residents argued that they wanted to keep the mountain because of the A and because it was a beloved residential park, the Dodsons countered that there were other mountains to climb. Ultimately, the residents of Tucson won, and A Mountain was saved. The mountain park is a beloved historic resource and has been a vantage point and lookout since the turn of the century. The giant white A was added to Sentinel Peak in 1916 by University of Arizona students celebrating a football win. The giant white A is a Tucson icon, and the new plan will make this incredible resource safer and more user-friendly. Take a moment to walk, bike, or drive to the top of Sentinel Peak and enjoy one of Tucson's unique heritage places.
Coming up tomorrow night on the Arizona Illustrated Political Roundtable with Jim Ninsel. Arizona's primary election is just a few days away. Can we expect any upsets? Also, Republicans are facing a lot of criticism and support about their position on abortion. I'm Tony Paniagua from all of us at Arizona Public Media. Have a great night.